People love saying it's too late. Too late to start, too late to learn, too late to matter. Hogwash. At 60, you're not finished. You're just less idiotic than you were at 30. Use that wisely and you'll outsmart the crowd, because the crowd never learns a damn thing. You don't need youth. You need clarity. And clarity, I'm afraid, only comes after decades of expensive mistakes. I made plenty, enough to fill a book nobody would want to read. When you're young, time feels infinite. You chase every shiny object like a dog after squirrels. When you're older, you finally calculate the cost of that stupidity. Money wasted, energy burned, peace sacrificed. So here's what matters now. If you're 60 or beyond, stop mourning what you should have done. Start optimizing for what still matters. At this stage, your greatest weapon isn't ambition. It's the ability to say no. No to envy. No to complexity. No to schemes that promise riches and deliver ulcers. Your goal isn't doubling your net worth. It's not losing it. The first rule of compounding is simple. Never interrupt it unnecessarily. You don't need more activity. You need fewer catastrophic errors. People ask me constantly, Charlie, what should I do at my age? I tell them the same thing. Simplify. Simplify your portfolio. Simplify your life. Simplify your circle. By 60, you should know who drains you and who deserves you. You should know what you understand and what you don't. Stay inside your circle of competence. It shrinks with age, yes, but it sharpens like a blade. I've never met anyone who destroyed their life by being too rational, but I've met hundreds who did it by getting greedy one last time. If you need excitement at 60, climb a mountain. Don't look for it in your portfolio. The market doesn't care about your birthday. It only punishes foolishness and rewards patience. And patience, fortunately, is something older people possess in abundance if they stop pretending to be young fools. The best part about age? You've witnessed enough stupidity to recognize patterns. You know how bubbles end. You know how confidence curdles into arrogance and arrogance into bankruptcy. Why repeat the same tired playbook? Your edge now isn't speed, it's memory. It's that mental filing cabinet labeled, I've seen this movie before and it doesn't end well. Use it. Remember, compounding doesn't ask your age. It only cares whether you let it work. If you've reached 60 without being broke, congratulations. You've already beaten most of humanity. Now your job is not to screw it up. Because at this age, the enemy isn't poverty. It's stupidity dressed as opportunity. Be boring. Be cautious. Be content with slow growth and quiet days. You don't need to prove anything anymore. The world rewards those who sit still while everyone else self-destructs trying to look productive. Don't chase the next big thing. Stay in the game, because survival, not excitement, builds a great ending. If you're over 60 and still saying yes to everything, you've learned nothing. By now, life should have hammered one truth into you. Every yes is a trade. You're trading the one asset you can't replenish. Time. Young people think saying yes creates growth. Older people realize saying no preserves sanity. I've spent a lifetime watching brilliant people destroy themselves because they couldn't resist one more deal, one more dollar, one more thrill. They had more money than 3 lifetimes required, and still they wanted a little more. Greed ages poorly. By 60, ambition should evolve into discernment. You should be filtering life, not hoarding it. The world overflows with traps disguised as opportunities. If you can't distinguish them, you'll spend your remaining years untangling yourself from other people's disasters. Let me tell you something. The greatest investment I ever made wasn't a stock. It was refusing things that wasted my time. No to shallow people. No to complicated businesses. No to debt-fueled fantasies. No to anything promising fast results, because nothing real happens fast. Look back at your dumbest decisions. Most began with, it looked like a great opportunity. At this age, you don't need great opportunities. You need peace. And peace doesn't come from more. It comes from less. Fewer moving parts, fewer obligations, fewer idiots. Life resembles investing. Subtraction often beats addition. Avoid the obvious mistakes: greed, leverage, ignorance, and the rest handles itself. That's how Warren and I survived. Not through genius, but through the discipline of not touching what we didn't understand. People forget. Doing nothing is a decision, often the right one. If you sit quietly, hold quality assets, and stay rational while everyone else loses their minds, you'll keep compounding wealth, health, and wisdom. But if you still crave constant stimulation, congratulations. You've learned nothing from 6 decades. You're still that young fool chasing noise. The world rewards those who say no without guilt. That's real power, because every no declares independence from the opinions, illusions, and addictions of others. It protects your limited energy. It preserves your only irreplaceable capital, clarity. Here's a thought worth remembering. Every yes should earn its way past your no. If it doesn't, let it go. The graveyard overflows with people who said yes to things that didn't matter. At 60, if you're still keeping score with your neighbors, you're playing a fool's game. Envy is a tax on intelligence. The older you get, the more expensive that tax becomes. Envy has no finish line. You get the house, someone buys a bigger one. You buy the car, someone buys 2. You invest well, someone gets luckier. Suddenly, what you have feels inadequate, not because it isn't enough, but because you're looking sideways. Age doesn't cure this. I've known billionaires who were miserable because someone else got invited to the better yacht party. That's the disease of modern life, status addiction. You can't cure it with success, only with perspective. By 60, you should have enough data to realize most people don't even know what game they're playing. Half the people you envy are secretly broke, unhappy, or both. They haven't figured it out. They just look shinier on the surface. You don't see the sleepless nights, the idiotic risks, the fractured families. You only see the performance. The irony? The people you envy probably envy someone else. It's a pyramid of foolishness, everyone climbing toward a happiness that doesn't exist. When you're young, envy can motivate harder work. When you're older, it only corrodes earned peace. That's why one of the smartest moves after 60 is quitting games that don't matter. You don't need to prove you're richer, faster, or smarter. You just need to prove, mostly to yourself, that you're not wasting what remains. I once said envy is the stupidest sin because it's the only one without any fun. Greed, lust, gluttony, at least they offer moments of pleasure before the regret. Envy, pure misery from start to finish. When you feel that comparison sting, remember, you're comparing your inside to someone else's highlight reel. Nobody posts their bankruptcy, loneliness, or dumb losses, only the illusion of winning. Chasing illusions destroys minds and money. Here's what I've learned. At 60, the real luxury isn't wealth. It's not caring what anyone thinks of your wealth. Peace beats the best stock tip. Contentment is the ultimate compounding machine. If you can wake up, read, think clearly, and walk without worrying what someone else is doing, you're richer than most billionaires. You won't find that in Forbes, but you'll feel it in your bones. The day you stop competing with others is the day you start compounding your own happiness. That's a better return than any investment I've made. One of life's cruelest tricks after 60 is comfort. You've survived the storms, you've made your money, you've earned the right to relax. That's exactly when decay begins, slowly, politely, unnoticed. Comfort looks harmless, feels deserved, but it's the silent assassin of curiosity, energy, and usefulness. The world keeps moving whether you do or not. Sit still long enough, and the gap between you and reality widens until you can't recognize the landscape. That's how people fossilize while still breathing. I've watched it happen. Sharp minds that once read, learned, adapted, suddenly retreating into nostalgia, talking about the good old days as if wisdom expired when they stopped chasing it. Let me tell you, the good old days weren't that good. You just survived them. That's all. There's no law saying you must stop learning after 60. That's a lazy excuse for people who've confused comfort with happiness. Want to stay sharp? Stay curious. Keep reading. Keep questioning. Keep doubting your own conclusions. The brain, like muscle, atrophies when idle. Stop challenging it, and it betrays you. Once the mind softens, everything follows. Judgment, discipline, decency. I've spent my life reading, not because it made me rich, but because it kept me alive mentally. Reading is self-defense against stupidity, including your own. Most people at 60 think they've seen everything. No, they've just stopped paying attention. The world will always surprise you if you're humble enough to admit you don't understand it yet. That humility, intellectual humility, is your best insurance policy. It keeps you from joining the crowd that's confident and wrong. That crowd gets slaughtered first. The best investors I know, even at 80, remain students, not of textbooks, but of reality. They observe. They connect dots. They revise opinions. They don't let comfort dull their edge. You don't need to chase every trend. Most are moronic. But you should understand what's changing: technology, demographics, human behavior. Ignoring them doesn't make them disappear. At 60, your advantage isn't agility, it's synthesis, seeing through noise because you've lived long enough to spot patterns. Stop feeding your mind and those patterns fade. You'll make the same errors as the young, only without time to recover. Don't let comfort steal your usefulness. A sharp old mind is rarer and more valuable than any startup or gadget. You don't need to keep up with the world. You just need to understand it. That's enough to stay ahead of 90% of people. Remember, the minute you stop learning, you start dying. It just takes the body longer to notice. If you're over 60 and still think money fixes problems, you've misunderstood both money and problems. Money is a tool, not a scoreboard, not therapy, certainly not a purpose. I've known rich people miserable at 40 and even more miserable at 70. Why? They kept confusing wealth with worth. Money buys comfort. It buys options. It can't buy wisdom, self-respect, or good sleep. By 60, you've probably figured out life's hardest problems: love, purpose, health, family. Don't respond to cash offers. If money alone created happiness, Silicon Valley would overflow with saints. Instead, it's full of anxious millionaires chasing immortality and dopamine. I never met someone who got happier after doubling their net worth past a certain point, but I've met plenty who got quieter because they finally realized the chase wasn't worth the noise. The real use of money after 60: freedom. Freedom from nonsense. Freedom to choose who you deal with, what you tolerate, how you spend your hours. At this age, time is your scarcest asset. Wasting it on things you dislike means you're not wealthy. You're trapped with better furniture. Simple rule: if it doesn't improve your peace, it's not worth the price tag. I've seen people build empires only to spend twilight years arguing with lawyers, partners, or family over it. That's not success. That's tragedy with a bigger house. When you're young, money represents possibility. When you're old, it represents responsibility. The older you get, the more your wealth should serve you, not the reverse. Part of that service is simplicity. Fewer holdings, fewer headaches, fewer people managing your money who don't understand risk. Complexity kills wealth like arrogance kills judgment. If you can't explain your financial setup to a 12-year-old, it's too complicated. People love talking about legacy. Most legacies rot because they were built on ego, not clarity. Want to leave something useful? Leave a model for rational living. Show your kids that restraint, patience, and character outlast stock tips. They won't remember your portfolio. They'll remember how you behaved when things went wrong. And things will go wrong. Markets crash, economies shift, people change. That's why you optimize not for returns, but for resilience, for the kind of life that absorbs shocks without collapsing. Wealth is what you don't see. Debts avoided, temptations resisted, peace preserved. If you've reached this age with sanity intact, relationships strong, and curiosity alive, you're richer than most on the Forbes list. Money is overrated. Rationality isn't. You can recover from dumb investments. You can't recover from a dumb lifestyle. By 60, the compounding you should care most about isn't in your portfolio. It's in your body. People treat compound interest like it's some secret formula. It is, but it applies to everything, not just money. Eat like a fool for 30 years, you compound disease. Think like a fool for 30 years, you compound regret. The math never lies. If you've made it this far, your biggest risk isn't a bear market. It's neglect. Neglecting sleep, neglecting movement, neglecting curiosity. I've watched sharp minds dull simply because they stopped maintaining the machine that carried them. People research stocks for weeks, but won't spend an hour understanding their own health metrics. That's stupidity, plain and simple. What good is $1 million if you spend every day in a waiting room? By 60, focus should shift from getting richer to staying functional. Energy, not money, becomes your real currency. The beautiful part, the habits protecting your body also protect your brain. Restraint, moderation, consistency. I've seen brilliant investors lose their edge because they couldn't control impulses. They mastered risk on spreadsheets, but not at the dinner table. If you can't delay gratification with food, drink, or anger, you'll eventually pay somewhere else, usually in hospitals or regret. Longevity isn't a reward for good genes. It's interest earned on a lifetime of discipline. You can't buy discipline. You can't outsource it. You either practice it daily or lose it slowly. The tragedy. People realize this only when it's too late, when the bill for decades of neglect finally arrives, written in blood pressure and cholesterol. Here's the irony. People who think long-term in business often live short-term in health. They plan for retirement, but not for vitality. I've always believed mind and body are a joint venture. If one collapses, the other follows. That's why I walked, read, thought, and worked, even in my 90s. Not chasing longevity. Motion kept the rust away. Don't try living forever. Just don't decay early out of stupidity. People think aging is decline. It's not, it's exposure. It reveals the true consequences of how you've lived. If you've lived with discipline, the later years can be the best, calmer, wiser, more efficient. Don't aim to feel young. Aim to stay useful. There's a difference. Youth is temporary. Usefulness, if maintained, can outlive you. By 60, you should have mastered the art of sitting still, not laziness, stillness. There's a difference. Laziness avoids effort. Stillness avoids stupidity. When you're young, movement feels like progress. You rush from project to project. Convinced activity equals achievement. Eventually, you discover it mostly equals exhaustion. I learned early. Most people lose money not because they're dumb, but because they can't sit quietly while compounding works its silent magic. Same applies to life. People ruin marriages, friendships, health because they can't resist tinkering with things that don't need fixing. Stillness is a superpower. It keeps you from reacting to nonsense. It allows wisdom to surface while others drown in noise. I call it inactivity backed by knowledge, doing nothing but doing it intelligently. Most of the world, especially finance, hates silence. They confuse noise for insight and busyness for value. It's a disease. It spreads easily. When you're older, you can't afford that disease. Your energy is finite. Spend it where the return justifies the cost. That means cutting motion that leads nowhere. Pointless arguments, hollow ambitions, endless consumption. I've met people who can't spend one evening alone with their thoughts. They need constant distraction. Screens, gossip, markets, politics. They fear silence because silence forces reflection. And reflection can be brutal if you've built life on illusions. But if you can sit with yourself, honestly, unflinchingly, you start seeing what actually matters. Stillness doesn't mean withdrawing from the world. It means detaching from stupidity, the ability to look at chaos and say, "Not my problem." I promise you that's one of life's most profitable sentences. When markets panic, I sit. When people gossip, I listen, rarely respond. When emotions flare, I wait. Patience is more powerful than intelligence because it protects you from yourself. You don't need to be the smartest in the room, just the calmest. At 60 and beyond, your edge isn't new knowledge. It's emotional control. You know when to walk away, when to shut up, when to do nothing. That's not weakness. That's mastery. There's an old saying I like, never interrupt your enemy while he's making a mistake. Well, in markets and in life, most enemies are invisible. They're not people. They're impulses, greed, fear, impatience. Let them destroy others while you sit quietly and let time reward restraint. Practice stillness daily in your thoughts, your reactions, your investments. You'll be shocked how much progress happens while you appear inactive. The world overflows with people who can't stop moving. Let them. They're why compounding still works for the rest of us. At 60, your quality of life depends less on what you own and more on whom you tolerate. People are leverage. The right ones multiply your peace. The wrong ones compound your misery. I've seen smart investors destroyed not by bad markets, but by bad company. Partners who couldn't be trusted, relatives who confused generosity with weakness, friends who only appeared when there was something to gain. If you're old enough to know better, but still surrounding yourself with fools, you're volunteering for suffering. The secret to aging well isn't vitamins, it's selectivity, choosing who gets your time, your energy, your emotional bandwidth. When I was younger, I thought tolerance was a virtue. Now I think it's often a liability. The longer you live, the more allergic you should become to stupidity, drama, and deceit. Some people bring problems into every room. Others bring calm. At 60, you should know the difference and adjust accordingly. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your peace. That includes family, especially family. Blood doesn't make someone rational. Shared DNA doesn't require shared chaos. If someone consistently drains you, distance is the only rational response. Not revenge, not argument, just quiet removal. That's another form of stillness, relational stillness, not needing to fix others, prove yourself, or win pointless debates. I've watched people waste entire retirements trying to manage unfixable personalities. You can't reform fools. You can only stop giving them attention. The best partnerships I ever had were simple: high trust, low friction, mutual respect. If you need lawyers to define basic decency, you've already lost. Find people who don't need constant explanation, people who speak the language of integrity without translation. At 60, you've played enough social poker to spot the fakes. Don't ignore the tells, overpromising constant drama, inconsistent values. Those are warnings from life's due diligence department. Same way you wouldn't invest in a company with shady accounting, don't invest time in people with shady character. When you find a few good ones, keep them. Good friends compound like capital. They appreciate quietly, pay dividends in laughter, and protect you in downturns. The tragedy is most people chase excitement over reliability. They choose fireworks over fireplaces, then wonder why their lives are full of smoke. I've always believed relationships are like investments. A few great ones outperform a portfolio of mediocrity. Prune ruthlessly, keep wisely, detach kindly. Remember, solitude beats stupidity disguised as company. If you're 60 and have 3 people you trust without hesitation, you're doing better than 99% of humanity. You don't need crowds anymore. You need clarity, loyalty, and quiet dinners with people who've earned their chair at your table. By 60, you've collected more years than you have left. That's not pessimism, it's arithmetic. If that statement makes you uncomfortable, you still haven't made peace with reality. People spend half their lives pretending time is infinite and the other half pretending it isn't running out. Both are denial. The clock doesn't care about your regrets, ambitions, or portfolio. It just ticks, quietly, indifferently, honestly. The only rational response is to face it. I've never understood people trying to outrun aging. They die, inject, stretch, deceive themselves as if fooling the mirror somehow fools mortality. Absurd. You can't negotiate with time, but you can cooperate with it. That means accepting trade-offs. Slower body, sharper mind, fewer years, more clarity, less noise. If you're wise, you'll see aging isn't loss. It's editing. Life removes what you don't need so you can finally focus on what matters. The tragedy is, most people fight the edit. They cling to youth like hoarders clinging to junk, and they miss the gift of simplicity waiting underneath. At 60, you don't need to chase immortality. Just stop accelerating decay. Stop fighting battles that don't matter. Stop pretending you can buy more time with busyness. Stop mistaking distraction for vitality. The older you get, the more you realize peace isn't found. It's cleared. Cleared of noise, ego, false urgency. That's the real compounding of old age. The quiet stacking of good days spent wisely, without pretense. Time isn't your enemy, it's your final teacher. It strips away illusions one by one until you're left with truth. And if you've lived rationally, truth is a friend. I've buried friends, colleagues, idols. Each one taught me a version of the same lesson. You don't get to decide how long you live. You only decide how honestly you use the time you have. If that sounds simple, it's because it is. But simple doesn't mean easy. It means essential. Most people waste decades learning that lesson. When they finally understand it, they're too tired to apply it. Don't be one of them. You don't need another project, another startup, another purpose. You need presence, a clear mind, a calm heart, the ability to sit in silence without feeling like you're missing out. That's when you finally realize you're not running out of time. You're just running out of illusions. And that's not tragedy. That's freedom. If you've made it past 60, you've already beaten most odds. The question now isn't how to add more years. It's how to multiply meaning. This is the stage where compounding turns inward. No longer about money, not even about achievements, but about the kind of person time has shaped you into. You've spent decades collecting knowledge. The final test is whether you can distill it into wisdom. Knowledge talks, wisdom listens. Knowledge argues, wisdom observes. The difference is humility, the realization that in the end, you control very little besides your own behavior. That's why the smartest people I've known became quieter with age, not defeated, refined. They no longer needed to prove they were right because they finally understood most of life isn't a debate. It's a filtering process. What remains at the end is what truly matters. Your integrity, your discipline, your peace. Those are the ultimate compounders. Money can vanish. Character endures, especially when nobody's watching. The beautiful part, character compounds silently, just like interest. Every time you choose restraint over impulse, patience over panic, honesty over convenience, you're earning invisible dividends that pay out in peace. When you're young, the world teaches you how to win. When you're old, you finally learn how to lose gracefully. You lose speed, ego, illusions, sometimes people. But in that subtraction, you gain something rarer, clarity. Clarity that all the frantic running, chasing, proving, arguing was mostly noise. Clarity that most of what you feared never mattered. Clarity that peace isn't a reward at the end. It's a skill you could have practiced all along. If you're over 60, practice it now. Sit with your thoughts. Keep reading. Keep learning. Not because you need more facts, but because curiosity is how the soul stays young. Spend time with people who make you think, not people who make you tired. Protect your energy the way you once protected your capital. And when the younger ones ask for advice, don't preach. Just show them what calm looks like. You'll teach more through stillness than sermons. I've said it before. Take all the wisdom you've gathered over a lifetime, boil it down to essence, and it comes to this. Avoid stupidity, keep learning, stay rational, and enjoy the quiet. That's the closest thing to a formula for a good life I've ever found. In the end, nobody remembers your net worth. They remember your temperament, your decency, the calm you brought to a noisy world. And if you can reach your final years without bitterness, without envy, without regret, then you didn't just live long. You lived well.